Well, we've had a great conversation over the last couple of days. Democrats, Republicans, all across the board, condemning what happened. Saying the president's first responses weren't appropriate enough, weren't on target enough, and I think the American public is showing its disgust and disdain for what happened in Charlottesville, and those who brought their views to the fore. Those are not welcome views on both sides. The Unite the Right, alt-left, whatever they are, they're all wrong to me and most of America. But we do have some breaking news. The rally organizer in Richmond, who was going to have his rally on 9/16, September 16th, has withdrawn his permit request, stating, quote, "I do not want to be part of an event where people are hurt or killed." Thanks, Mark Ramos, for updating us on my Facebook page. That's good news. Hopefully, as Sean Kenny and I were discussing in the previous segment, we can have a seminar about the rightful place of our history and how to discuss it meaningfully going forward. Going forward right now, I believe we have on the line David Avella from GOPAC. David, are you there?
Good morning.
How are you?
Fantastic. It was interesting to hear small world stuff. You mentioned John is up in Cooperstown and his son is playing at the Dream Park. Coincidentally, my uncle is the gentleman who runs that tournament and the Dream Park. So
You're
small
kidding.
World, and good luck to John's son.
Well, I got it. Who's your uncle?
Mike Walter is I've lived in Northern Virginia for a long time and got this wonderful offer to run this baseball park, and that's what he's doing.
It's just so cool. I got to tell him that. I'm texting John right now. His nephew is on the line. Oh, this is so cool. And this is the great thing, David. I think you'll appreciate this and maybe understand it and agree that when we share who we are and what we're doing, we can relate.
Okay.
And that's how we start going. Oh, you're just like me, or we can have a conversation. We can relate to one another, and we don't have that many differences, right?
It is an outstanding point, and in watching the coverage the last couple of days, the media's obsession with what the president said or didn't say to their satisfaction, and in the time they wanted him to say it, and no matter what he said or when he said it, it was never going to reach what they wanted. They were always going to be critical of how he handled it. But Americans didn't need a statement per se from the president or any politician to think that what they saw in Charlottesville was hateful and evil and illegal, and those who committed crimes should be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law.
Agree.
Which means the actions that come out of Charlottesville, and the president committed complete resources, and Governor McAuliffe thanked the president for the resources, and Governor McAuliffe has put the appropriate resources to make sure those who committed crimes and did illegal things will be fully prosecuted. That's what Americans want to see. They want to see what actions are going to be taken coming out of this to ensure that this hate and this evil isn't allowed to continue, where the media wants to obsess over words.
Exactly. And that's part of our problem in our culture, is that we expect our political elected officials to lead our daily conversation for us. And it's our responsibility as citizens to have these conversations with one another in an environment where we can go, yeah, that's pretty much what I agree with too. Because when you get down to it, that's what everyone was condemning it, and I think they're looking for their political leaders to basically reflect what they're thinking. And they're going, this is wrong, right? Please say that. Please reassure us that you see this too as being horrific and not who we want in our political discourse in America.
There was never any comment by the president that suggested otherwise.
No.
He may not have used the language that some wanted him to use, and could he have been stronger? Those are all for debating societies. Never was there a comment made by him that condoned anything that happened in Charlottesville. In fact, he was against it.
Right.
It goes back to, though, that for most Americans, they don't need a politician telling them what to think about what happened in Charlottesville. This is a country of 330-plus Americans. It took the entire country to find 500 or 600 individuals who wanted to go to Charlottesville and be violent.
Right.
This is not a widespread belief going across America, nor a commonly held perspective that Americans have.
And I think
we looked at that and saw how evil and awful it was.
Right, and I think it presents us an opportunity for us to define ourselves by being not that and saying that's not really who we are. And by doing so, we say, hey, maybe we really can get along. Maybe we really can start governing in a far more productive manner. Incremental approaches to solving the issues of the day. I've worked with you on issues over the years, and we've been a part of political operations, and we've discussed and we've seen these things all over the place. And I think it's heartwarming at the end of the day to pull back and go, we're all in this together, and this extremely small minority who is just trying to gin up, publicity for themselves is not going to win if we don't allow it. And I think everyone's trying to say we're not going to allow this anymore.
Fair point. And as we move towards the November elections, and the Democrats feel very empowered, and you have President Obama and Eric Holder, who now have a new group to try to elect Democrats, it does put a new emphasis on people feeling personally secure, and security will be an issue for candidates on both sides to have to be talking about. And Republicans have delivered pretty well in the Commonwealth on that. Certainly, given the majorities we have in the House, there's always the potential to slide back, but I know the House Republicans are going to be doing all they can to hold every incumbent. There's even one or two seats still in the state that are held by a Democrat that we could pick up. But let me just finalize all that with this interesting point that you have the National Democrats crowing now about they have all this momentum going into November. And one example they use is they just won a special election in Iowa in a seat that they already held. I was talking with a reporter the other day, and I said, well, if Democrats hold the seats they currently hold and Republicans hold the seats we currently hold, we'll continue to hold two-thirds of the legislative chambers in America.
Well, it was interesting. I looked at that Iowa. Joining us on by phone is David Avella of GOPAC. Dave, is that GOPAC.org, I believe?
.org, that's right.
GOPAC.org. We're talking about the events in Charlottesville, and we're rolling into elections across the country and the special election in Iowa. And I looked at that. This is the geek I am, political geek that I am. I looked at that election and where this was. I think it was in southeast Iowa, and the two candidates. One was from the one who won was from the most populous area of the district, and he's a longtime veterinarian. Was a great candidate from the right part of the district, and that's part of district politics, right? The guy who lost was from the least populous part of the district, was new to politics, wasn't that as well known as the longtime veterinarian. So this really goes to candidate recruitment, candidate training, and effective campaign organizations. And I know that's what GOPAC does a lot of work in.
I appreciate that plug for GOPAC. And you're right. I mean, ultimately, this was a district that favored the Democrats demographically and voter historically, and they had a candidate that fit the district, and thus they held the seat. Where nationally Democrats are also crowing is they did pick up a Republican seat in Oklahoma, with the dynamics being that the Republican left in a little bit of a scandal, and we had an uphill fight, but no reason to believe that come 2018, when normal voting patterns will go back in place, particularly at the state legislative level, that we won't pick that seat back up. So all that in the bigger context, you see Democrats trying to find any morsel of crumb to say momentum is on their side and that 2018 is going to be a great year for them. And the reality is the map favors Republicans far more than it favors Democrats, everything from U.S. Senate all the way down. Take the neighboring state of West Virginia, where Donald Trump won West Virginia by 44 points. Joe Manchin is up seeking re-election. There are 8 states, in fact, where Donald Trump won by 15 points or more, or around 15 points, that Democrat incumbents are trying to defend their seats. The House races, there will be certainly many competitive House races, but still the districts and the House members, incumbents are tough to beat. It still favors us. And even in these special elections for Congress, which has been in many ways comical, because the Democrats had a better turnout but still lost, they saw that as a victory. And that ultimately they are trying to redefine what victory means in the context that, well, we didn't win, we didn't actually elect someone, but we did better than we should have done.
Well,
now to them is victory.
One of the aspects of David,
one of
the aspects of the Virginia elections that are coming up is that outside national groups are actively playing in the elections, targeting certain races, certain districts. On a national level, though, because Virginia is sort of this crucible of democracy, because we have an election every year, we become sort of a testing lab for a lot of groups. Not that there's anything wrong with it. That's part of democracy, and it's perfectly legitimate and perfectly rational and reasonable, and should be welcomed to a degree in which it's a healthy part of the process. But what with, from the 2016 turnout of almost 4 million, we're going to have just a shade over 2 million turnout, probably in the low mid 40s in a percentage of turnout. What are national groups looking at when they look at Virginia to forecast going into the midterms? What is GOPAC
Certainly
looking at?
Messaging will be looked at, and what messages are motivating voters. No reason to, all that said, no reason to believe, though, that the candidates who focus on voters' economic and personal security and helping make their lives easier, better, and safer in that context, those will be the voters who are most successful. And we, I think, sometimes overthink messaging. Voters are pretty clear and simple as to what they want, and that is a good thing. But what groups also do is look at various tactics they use, the increased role of social media and the increased role of digital advertising, and what are other ways that groups can help turn folks out. So you see experimenting going on in trying to, whether it's turning people out or how they organize or how they raise money. Some of the fundamentals of campaigns and politics haven't changed, but there's always, every cycle presents a new opportunity to find a new, more effective way to motivate voters and turn them out and elect the candidates of our choice.
Right. Now, take us through the fundamentals, and because you are a genius at this. I mean, you have run some great campaigns in your day. You helped Michael Steele get elected RNC chairman, and you've run some other campaigns. Take us through the fundamentals, the things that don't really change that are effective in politics, in campaigns.
We referenced it just a second ago, which is voters want candidates who are going to make their life easier, better, and safer. And the candidates who come out with ideas that talk about voters' economic, or help address people's economic and personal security, they win. It is at the center of why Donald Trump won, that he, particularly amongst, it's not talked about, I would offer, enough, that how did Donald Trump ultimately win the primary, and how did he ultimately beat out 16 other candidates having never run for office? And if you look at the exit polling data through the Republican primary, Republican voters liked the fact that he was a job creator, that he had actually run a business, that the ideas he talked about were by and large economically focused in his early campaign. Look at the actions he's done as president, have focused mainly on repealing the economic wet blanket of many of the regulations of the Obama years. So as we move into elections this year, that doesn't change. That fundamental is ultimately voters want to make their life easier. They want elected officials who make their life easier, better, safer. And beyond that, I mean, people can try different tactics to help get that message out or motivate people. But that's the one fundamental that doesn't change in campaigns.
That's on the messaging side. That's sort of the macro level. But is politics, and I think it's really a ground game. Getting your message out that, if you put it in your terms, easier, better, safer, you still have to go out and knock on the doors. You still have to organize. You still have to get your people to the polls.
You still have to get your message to voters, however you choose to do that. And particularly candidates running for state and local office, that no question is door-to-door is still the most effective way to communicate that message. But as you start getting to higher offices, I mean, the reality is the President of the United States can't knock on every door. Even a member of Congress is very challenged, given how many people they represent, to go knock on every door. So, the role of mass media and TV and direct mail play a far more important role. But to your point, it's ultimately about how you get your message out, and you still have to have the financial resources. You don't have to have the most resources.
As Trump showed us,
financial resources to be able to tell voters what you're going to do once you get in office to help make them want to vote for you.
Yeah, and Trump showed us he doesn't have to outraise his opponent to win.
That's right. And there are examples every election on that where the big spenders aren't necessarily the one. There was actually an interesting stat, and I'm going to be slightly off on this, but the percentage of self-funders who lose is higher than the percentage of self-funders who win over the last decade.
Really?
And part of that speaks to contributions are also levels of support. And if you can't get people investing in your campaign and giving to you, it also suggests that they're probably not voting for you. And that's why you don't always see self-funders being so successful.
Because I want to think, in an element to having run campaigns and been on those calls and have to ask for support, what it builds in a campaign is, I need you. And when you say to someone, I don't need you, they're not going to work for you. And that's how you get people on board a campaign. A campaign is not about the candidates. A campaign is about everyone moving in that similar direction with a leader being the candidate. And as I tell candidates who talk to me all the time about how to best run campaigns, they don't like raising money, they don't like doing this and doing that. And I tell them, I said, you're being selfish by not asking for help. You need to ask people to pull on your oars too, because it makes them feel good about themselves and their worth and their purpose in life. And I think candidates need to be more cognizant of that, even if they have the resources to run for office.
Agreed.
David Avella, GOPAC.org. Thanks for joining us today, David. We wish you all the very best out there, and hopefully we'll run into you soon. And I just texted John. He's aware that your uncle is up at Cooperstown Dreams Park, and he hopefully will find him. There's David Avella from GOPAC.org, an organization that works to elect Republicans around the country.